Welcome. Hello. My name is Ryan Shankles, the author and narrator of the audiobook Directed. The book's title was coined through a life and death ordeal in my local mountains, Mount San Gorgonio in Big Bear, that's Southern California. Gorgonio, its meaning in Latin, means the violent one. Southern California's tallest peak at 11,505 feet above sea level, its hidden name turned out to be a very formidable opponent for me, my two friends, and everyone involved. This true story account is about a man, and at times a scared little boy, who found out more than this physical mountain's prowess could give. I truly discovered who Jesus really is. Unfortunately, it took a crucible chamber to do that, and I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. Thankfully, that trial by fire brought me unequivocal faith in Him as my King, Savior, and my personal favorite, my best friend. Thank you for purchasing. Enjoy. There'll be times where you cheer, maybe cry, but your faith we put to the test.
Chapter 1. Before Christ and After Christ. It was May 4th, 2013, around 10 p.m. in a dark, cold, and unforgiving forest. Frantic and freezing, my two friends and I were unsure of what would come next. We were fighting the looming fear that threatened to drive us all mad. Tightly huddled, our bodies shake with light moments where our teeth would chatter, and hypothermia summons the three of us. Trying to stay warm, we drew closer to one another. The survival term is called spooning, but we were still way too traumatized to let go and collapse into a sleep. The unfamiliar sounds trigger a hypervigilance of self-preservation. Our movements were governed by exhaustion, pain, and severe cramping that would lock up calves, feet, and hamstrings without any warning. On top of that, our legs had thousands of deep razor cuts from miles of forging through thick brush and short pants. We were utterly unprepared. Mustering some of our insight into survival, we erected a rock and stick wall, and this is where we tried to lay down and survive for the night. Once we were positioned inside of it, we piled pine branches on top of us to aid in trapping our body heat and block the wind swells that were fierce and seemed to be increasing since nightfall started. I never heard so many different sounds that the trees make from an howling and undulating wind. I was caught between the fascinating noises of a real fear of death. Every so often, one of us yells in agony, "Crab!" followed by a scream that is uncontrollable as many pointy pine needles find the vast open skin nerves throughout the lower half of our bodies. The only blanket we had was a small blue plastic tarp that barely covered us. Its thin layer helped to block out some of the makeshift pile of pine needle branches. It was all we could do. The following form of torture was that one of us would have to turn over its body for comfort and would inadvertently pull the tiny blue tarp off the other person, exposing the guy on the outside to the frosty cold air. Deep in my own thoughts on the third round of being on my back, recalling when I bought that tarp, now I'm wishing that I had purchased the upgraded size for this very occasion. Fear began to overtake me, and I realized I was starting to lose control of my breathing rhythm. Slowly, fighting back, the years of cold water surfing forced me to learn how to quiet my thoughts of fear and begin shallow breathing until I stabilized myself. Closing my eyes, I rejected this fear that crept past my restraint. My inner voice, it started to pray for help. Internally, a deep cry went out from my soul. "Jesus, please help us, it's my fault. Please help us." I kept saying this as a confession. David and Poppy, they couldn't hear me. My two friends managed to fall into a deep slumber while I repeated this inward cry. Hoping to rock myself to sleep, continuing to plea for help, begging that the nightmare would end and give way to a glorious sunrise. My prayer was overshadowed by a picture of that eerie movie scene when someone's in a horrific moment and the scene fades out, and the following event is the person waking up to a sunlit morning and the suffering is over. Yet, I'm being tormented internally, being taken to the point of a psychotic break. One moment, I'd be on the verge of finally passing out, and the next, another pine needle would seem to poke me purposely. It felt like a syringe, a cruel joke of nature, an instrument of agony. I could have never imagined it. I almost screamed, "Stop! I can't take it anymore! The pine branches have to go!" Yet, we needed them to stay warm. I knew at some point I'd finally fall asleep. So I lay there, eyes closed, trying to pray and not move a centimeter. About an hour passed, and I slowly just started to fade into a vision of myself looking at all of us from above. Initially, I wondered whether I had died. It was in slow motion and remarkably real. This feels like an outer body of experience, I said to myself. Taken upward toward the sky, above the large pine trees, slowly rising away from where we were, it felt safe, like I was being taken to a heavenly place. As this new revelation of me fading into the distance seemed vividly natural, I started to see myself in my apartment in San Francisco 2 years prior when I received my deliverance from demonic forces. It was when my life completely changed, and I indeed met Jesus, the person.